You have a creative gift and you want to offer it to the world, and I want to help you bring that forth in a way that feels really aligned to who you are as an artist and a creative, while also just giving you a really practical roadmap for making that happen realistically. So, spoiler alert, this is not the do this and get rich overnight and quit your job type of become a full-time artist thing. This is the tried and true sort of slow is fast approach to really stretching your edge, expanding your capacity, dealing with all of the fears that come up, right, of sharing your gift and your art with the world, while also meeting that genuine desire in your heart that says, I know I can make this happen. So this video is about how to become a full-time artist in 2025 without social media. And I'm gonna just sort of track my personal evolution of what's worked for me, where I've failed, the successes I've had, and all of the wisdom and lessons that I would impart maybe onto my younger self that are broken down into an easy to digest way that will hopefully resource you with a great sort of direction to becoming a full-time artist. So if you're new here, my name's Kev. I'm an architectural designer, creative strategist, artist, fabricator, all those things, and I love helping ambitious creatives design and build a life and business that they love. So that's exactly what we're here to do today. So how I want to break this down is to sort of compartmentalize the three stages of what I consider to be the process of becoming a full-time creative artist, and inside of those kind of maybe dissect them a little bit more. So the first stage is what I call free practice. And nobody wants to hear this because everyone just wants to immediately start making money. And while that's amazing, sometimes it's unrealistic, right? Especially in the artistic mediums, you really have to get some skin in the game. So chances are you're really creative, you have a great sense of craft for what you do, but you may be struggling to be able to get it into a world that is valuable in the marketplace, because that's a really, really important skill. So what we want to stretch in this first stage of becoming a full-time artist is your capacity to show up and meet the needs of the marketplace around you. And a lot of times that's generating the need, especially if you're an artist, because there might be a void that you can fill through your art, or people might have to be informed about the value of what you can bring, and you might have to meet them in a creative way. And what I mean by this is the process of free practice is essentially getting a client or a patron to fund the materials for you to create. So the way that I tell everyone to go about doing this, and this goes for pretty much any business, not just a creative artistic business, but it's make a 50 to 100 business cards and make it a point in the next 1 week or 2 weeks, I'm going to hand out all of these cards. And some people you hand out those cards to might spark a conversation. Others might not. But that conversation can be a great way for you to really get curious about where people are, what they are looking for as far as, let's say, I use this example a lot. Let's say you do hand-painted signs, because I think it's a really cool thing. I don't do it. But let's say you do hand-painted signs and you make a business card saying like, I design and hand-paint custom signs for residences, commercial businesses, XYZ, whatever your thing says. And you can have those conversations and say like, where would you like to see a sign? Like, do you have a business? Is there something that do you feel like there's a bad sign in town that you would love to see repainted? And they might say, oh yeah, that coffee shop has a shitty sign, it's time for them to get a new one. That might lead you to going to the coffee shop and pitching your services, right? So the point in printing out these business cards is for you to have as many conversations as possible. And it's really just a numbers game, except it's more fun because you're not just hoping like social media for some algorithm to do it for you. You're really the one driving the bus, right? You're really stewarding the conversation. You're able to shake someone's hand and look them in the eyes, which I believe is just so important in this day and age. And that's pretty much how I started off. I started a couple different ways. My very, very first endeavor was through surfboards, and it all was just, I made myself one, My friends saw it. I told them, hey, I'm making boards now. I can make you a board. I literally would say, I'll make you a board for $200 because I knew that's what it costed at the time to make a surfboard. And every surfer that's broke is like, heck yeah, I'll do that. Because usually the boards that I was making, when I was at the end of that kind of path, I was selling those for $1,000, $1,500, but those can run a lot of money. So anywho, that was one way. Then with my design and fabrication business, it was literally me printing business cards, printing flyers, putting them every single bulletin board, handing them out to every single contractor, every single designer, every single landscaper, whoever it was. And it's a numbers game. Let's say you do that 50 times. If you have a good communication skills, which is a whole different thing, I have a couple different master classes on that. Go scrounge my channel for that. You're bound to get a couple potential leads in the door. You're bound to get a few people who are interested or at least curious, right? So once you've gone through that experiment, take a week, 2 weeks, have those conversations, you'll kind of narrow down a list to maybe, let's be just really conservative and say you handed out 50 to 100. I mean, this is going to be way more probably, but then let's say you're having 3 conversations. So 3% is like a standard conversion rate for like an online, offering cold traffic. So in person, you could probably get that way up, but let's just be conservative. You have 3 people who are interested in your hand-painted signs. One of them's a business, one of them's just someone who has like a funky property and likes hand-painted signs, and someone else is really someone who just freaking believes in what you do. So then you can lead with like, hey, I would love to create something of value for you. How about we decide on a design and you pay for the paints, the piece of steel or the wood that I'll be painting it on, and I'd be happy to build this for you free of charge as far as my labor goes. Does that sound fair? And however you want to exactly structure that, but I think that's a good template, is proposing, leading the conversation. I would love to do this for you, and I'd be happy to do my labor for free if you pay for the materials. Does that sound fair? That's a great framework for it to be really hard for someone to say no. Now, why I love the approach of doing something for business as well, especially if you're doing it free practice. I mean, there's no reason why the business would say no if this is kind of what you're doing. Now this is something that's public, right? You do that, you paint that sign, you say, whatever, Foster Coffee or whatever the heck it is, My buddy had a great, I can't share the idea. It was a great name for a coffee shop, but I won't spoil it. Now that's experienced, right? That piece of art is not only like an artifact that you've done that you can photograph, it's experience, it's a conversation starter. And then especially, let's just keep running with the example of the coffee shop. If that's a coffee shop you go to, you can have a cup of coffee and you can talk about that sign. Not in a way that's like, I painted that sign, but there's a way that you can naturally sort of bring that out, and people might share your name. People might, oh, that person did that. So that's one way that I encourage everyone starting off to get sort of the ball rolling of what it feels like to offer their gift and meet and create value in the marketplace. Because there's a ton of artists who are so talented but are scared shitless of offering it to the world, and either never do it or they charge $10 for a painting that took them 2 weeks or whatever. That's a huge exaggeration, but I'm sure that you know plenty of people that are like that. This is a great way to ease into it. And so maybe you do that for 2, 3, 4, 5 people. I remember, I think my first 5 surfboards I did free practice. And then I was like, okay, I'm good enough now to where I feel like I am empowered to sort of make a profit, to charge money, to charge my quote worth, although I don't really like that phrase. And then you can move into the stage of getting, let's say, your first 5 commissions. So what you can do now is whatever comes in your door, whether you're still working on a free practice project or whether you have potential people interested, your goal now obviously is to refine your craft, but now to refine the soft skills. A huge part about making something sort of your occupation, making your vocation your occupation, is really learning to now put your big boy entrepreneur pants on and learn to interact as a leader. Because if you run your own business, I'm considering, if you're an artist, you're still a business owner to some degree, right? And I consider that to be a leadership role. So you have to learn the ways of being in integrity, showing up in your community, being really trustworthy, responsible, dependable, communicating clearly, often, charismatically, all of these things that are authentic expressions of who you are, but refined because you're now in a leadership role. That's sort of your goal of the second stage of getting your next 5 to 10 commissions, let's say. So as you're working on a project, whether it's free practice, and I would encourage you to do this even while you're in the free practice, but especially now while you're getting commissioned, is focus on stretching all of those skills, and now you document your process. You document what's working, what's not working, what you're learning. You take process photographs. You update the client about the process. And this is where now not only your work gets refined, but the process of how you offer it to the world becomes more valuable. You communicate more clearly, you have a great client experience of what it's like to get a hand-painted sign from you, to get a custom leather bag made from you, is part of your artistry, right? A lot of people make the mistake that your craft is just what you create. It's not. Your craft is the entire process of somebody interacting with you. And that starts way before and after the product is made, right? So this is where you're really documenting your process, learning those soft skills. And while you're documenting it and learning those soft skills is now you can take that, bundle it, and share it. Now you don't have to use social media. This is about not using social media because you can keep all of this local. So what I recommend is using something like Nextdoor. It's not really a social media platform. It's a way for people to understand the neighborhood happenings. And you can make it a point to maybe introduce yourself there, introduce who you are, what you like to do, how you serve. And then you can make another post or 2 posts about the process of sharing your art, the process of what you're learning, what it was like to do this project. And that can be a way to get your local community talking even more. And it's not taking pictures on Instagram, it's not doing the short form video stuff, it's just meeting your local community, because I believe it all has to start there, right? If you are not a leader in your local community, it's going to be really hard to lead. Everyone wants to do the digital thing, myself included. I think it's a great way to impact more people, but you really have to become a trustworthy leader, creative leader in your local community for that to have some sense of earned merit, you know? And you don't have to be qualified, you just have to be called, but you really got to get skin in the game. So this section is really about getting deeper skin in the game and feeling comfortable proposing and sort of sharing your services with the world. So what started off as conversations is now you have some projects in the door, you might be making a little bit of money on top of it, you're refining your soft skills, and you're taking what you're learning and you're sharing it, whether that's, you know, online like Nextdoor, or you have like a community event, whatever that is, where you're continuing the discipline of refining the way that you share your value with the world in a way that resonates, right? So maybe you no longer just like, I hand paint signs. Maybe you're like, I create on-brand imagery, artistry, sort of logo design for local businesses, and I do it by hand, you know. It can refine beyond the fact of like, oh, this is my craft. No, this is the value. The value is hand-painted logos and branding. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool. There's a niche for that, for sure. Please take that idea and run with it. So that second stage is getting your first 5 to 10 commissions. The third stage is learning to productize yourself. Productizing yourself comes from getting enough sort of experience under your belt to know what's really clicking, what's not clicking, and how can I sort of package this up as sort of an independent offering that can still be custom to some degree. As an artist, things are always going to be custom, but how can I make this offering a product that I can just have available to the world? It doesn't mean it has to be done and ready, but you can refer people to a conversation. Oh, flat rate, my sign is $2,000. This size sign, 2 colors, $2,000. Now, a great way to productize yourself now is to take everything that you've done, take your documentation process, and now would be the time to make a website if you haven't already. You would make a website, and alongside of that, I always would do a Pinterest board, because Pinterest is great to be discovered as far as artistry, anything built. You know, I started off doing furniture, I would post all my furniture on there and things like that. So to make a portfolio, a website that now has some sense of fullness to it, you know, you can fill a page with, you know, 3 to 10 projects. I would recommend having more than one, but that's okay. And simple format is you can have your projects, and then pretty much someone clicks on it and they can see a little bit of your process, and there's a clear call to action on every single page, where if it's like, or you can take them to a different page where it says hand-painted signs starting at $2,000, fill out this form to get started, name, phone number, what's the sign for, where do you live, let's get started. And now all of a sudden you have what's called a funnel, right? You have a product in some sense. And especially if you're going through Pinterest, you can take people from Pinterest, which is now expanding your offering more globally, or just maybe outside to the greater metropolitan area of where you are, where now you're discoverable, right? You're not just having conversations, you're not just doing local projects. You can spend your energy creating, but also expanding into being more discoverable. Now, this is like the third stage of what it means to be a full-time artist, because at this point, you probably have a consistent basis. You might actually be full-time at this point. You might have been able to sort of downshift whatever your other forms of making money are and focus solely on your craft. Because you'll know the numbers, right? So if I'm saying, I'll use an example for me. So kind of how I really started to productize myself was I stopped doing, I still do, but I stopped doing ultra custom work, or the ultra custom work that I started doing as far as design and fabrication. It would need to be a bigger project that would really, really, like, you know, cover a couple months of all of my needs, right? And I just started to focus on a singular, unique offering. I started doing handrails, but really, really sexy contemporary handrails that were anywhere from 2 to 10,000, depending on, you know, how many steps, the complexity. So I got it down to like a science of like, I could know off the bat roughly how much a project was gonna cost, and it was just sort of build it and go, because I had a trademark design, right? And so I could run the numbers. It's like, oh, I need at least 3 people to reach out a month so that I would close 1 to 2 projects. That's not a lot if you really think about it. And same thing, say for the hand-painted sign example. If you're charging $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 per sign, depending on how big it is, you really only need to be talking to like 5 people seriously each month for 2 or 3 of those to come in. Now, that might not meet all of your needs, but let's say each one is $2,000. Your materials you're working at like a, you know, pretty high margin there because it's mostly your gift. You know, 2 to 3 projects at $2,000 should really cover most of the bases there. And then throw this on top of being able to productize yourself, making yourself more discoverable. Now you're cooking with oil, right? Now you're engaged in your local community. You have projects under your belt. You're like, oh, I did that project on that street corner, and let's take you down to this coffee shop. I did a project there. You have become more available in the community by your leadership, by being comfortable engaging the world with your craft. And now you're more discoverable, which is just creating more surface area for luck, creating more opportunities for potential clients to come in the door. You know, I'm baffled by like a Nextdoor post that I made a month ago or something I made on Pinterest last year will get me an inbound lead for a piece of furniture or for a handrail or for a planter box or something. I mean, I have these kind of different sectors. And I'm baffled by that because it's like, whoa, like I'm just allowing myself to expand and be more discoverable. So that would be stage 3 of really becoming full-time. And at that point, that's when you're really cooking with oil. And that's when, you know, you start to really play with what do I even want to do? What do I want to grow into? Which leads me to sort of the bonus stage is expansion. Now, the expansion phase is how can now I use the resources that I have to get more leverage, right? That could look like starting a YouTube channel. That could look like using those resources that you're getting from your full-time business and building a secondary business off the back of the one that you've done, or a whole different offering. Or that looks like, now you can run a workshop showing people the artfulness of and fun of hand painting signs. You get more creative about going less one-to-one and more one-to-many. Now you can still do one-to-one, but one-to-many is a great way. And I always say you can do workshops, right? You can, if you're me, it's like you can host a welding workshop and you can have everyone build their very own, little planter box cup thing out of steel. And people love experiences. And people love getting a view into the world of artists and creatives, because a lot of people are not artistic and creative. So if you can share a little bit of your world in a one-to-many format, that's the way you get leverage. So maybe that's once a month, you run a workshop of like, hand paint your own sign. We're gonna be painting the word that you wanna really focus on this year. Love, rise, expansion, joy, abundance, whatever it is, and we're all gonna make our hand-painted signs. That's great, let's do it. You get 10, 20, 30 people in a workshop, you all of a sudden have a little bit more leverage, right? You can charge, say, $100 a seat, $200 a seat, something like that, and you can have this whole day event. Or again, now you're kind of creating even bigger ripples in the world. You're going one-to-many, you're getting compensated well for it in a short period of time, and you're actually creating what I would call like a really meaningful experience, right? Like you're really creating a heartfelt human experience, which I think is what the world deeply, deeply craves. And there's ways that you can do that online, sure, but I really would celebrate the idea of seeing how you can do that locally, So if you hand paint signs, I just laid out a freaking killer business plan for you. Let me know how that goes. But this is really the process, the 3 stages of what it takes to become a full-time artist. And again, look, it's slow. Slow is fast. Like you cannot rush this thing. I'm all for you standing on the street corner and handing out your business cards in a day. That's great. But it's less about handing them all out and more about that moment, that energetic transaction, the look in the eye, the handshake, and the conversation. If you're just handing out flyers, this is what I do, you might just be adding a little bit more noise. And that's not to say that your gift isn't valuable in that light, but people might not feel the power of your gift. So slow is fast. But I would say give yourself a solid 6 months to a year to explore what it feels like for you to step into these roles. Because to be honest, a lot of people might pursue becoming full-time creative, but realize, I don't like this responsibility. I don't like working with clients. I kind of like showing up and having somebody say, this is what you're working on today, and just doing it. So you'll really discover if this is for you or not. But this process actually does work, but it takes your devotion and commitment, and it takes you fully giving your gifts to the world. Go watch my video on purpose and giving your gifts now, because I'll go deeper into like the power of what that really means and that calling. But this is just a loose framework of what it could look like for you to become a full-time artist in 2025. So I hope that this was helpful. If it was, please let me know. I'd love to know what you're building. Drop in the comments what it is, and I'm excited to hear from y'all. But in the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.